I get pretty excited about 2-day makeovers for ground force, a little patch outside somebody's back door. But the excitement that I feel about the Eden project is kind of 1,000,000 times more than that, because it's almost 1,000,000 times bigger. It's got so many diverse environments in it. It's the world encapsulated in Cornwall.
It's about challenge, it's about adventure, it's about daring to dream, and everybody has a little bit of adventure in them.
The great thing about Eden is it's a very powerful reminder of that connectedness, interdependence between us and the rest of life on Earth, going right back to the source of so many of those chains of being, if you like, going right back to plants and reminding people that that's where the power of nature starts. That's going to have huge knock-on effect over time.
I was talking to my boss on the telephone, and I was in Glasgow in a design office, and he mentioned that he thought that we might get the job, and I then begged down the phone for it, basically. Although I'd heard no more about it, I actually begged him, please let me do it. And he said, well, when can you be available? And I said, now!
Been here just over a year, and the first day I came here, you look down the pit, a 200-foot deep hole, full of water, slurry, and you think, how the heck are we going to do anything at all there? But we're progressing, it's coming along quite well, and every day I come up to this viewing point, and I stop and I just look down the pit. And I think, yeah, we're building something special here.
the worst weather Cornwall has ever had, which should have been the biggest nightmare for the project. We lost 8 weeks of work and McAlpines were tearing their hair out. What are we going to do? But on their own admission, it was the best thing that this project could ever have had happen to it, because the weather was so bad that all the fissures that could open, all the springs that might only appear once in 100 years started to appear. And there were these engineers going around capping them, putting drains in. So we've now got the best drainage system of anywhere you've ever been.
It's very exposed. You can see the sort of dome is made up of huge hexagons, and you're balancing on a pole and leaning out for one thing and hanging on your ropes on another thing and hauling heavy things around. And it's quite a challenge. It's quite a physical challenge as well as a mental one, because you can do it. It's easy enough to balance, but it's a real, oh my God, there's 40 metres of air beneath me, so it's a real head thing.
It'll be a very organic space. It'll be a 21st century space, but on the scale that we're talking about, it'll be awesome.
What the Eden Project will do is act like a dirty great big magnifying glass, thrusting nature and plant life under people's noses and letting them see that it's actually far more exciting than they ever imagined if they just take the trouble to get in closer and have a look.
I don't think there's anything much more important than building on the seedlings, which I suppose is all we have at the moment, terribly important ones, and some of them are really thrusting way above the soil now, of environmental consciousness. It's there, but we have to keep working on it.
I think it's very important to get people interested in their environment and the environment as a whole, not just outside their back door. And if you can start off at all levels, very simply, then people get into it and it snowballs.
I think probably I became passionate about the environment when I started working abroad in places like southern and central Africa. And you see the effects of desertification, you know, when things go wrong with the environment and land that used to be reasonably fertile suddenly will grow nothing at all. And usually that's because of something that we have done, that man has done one way or the other. And the effects are literally disastrous. Millions, sometimes tens of million people suffer as a direct result of that.
The funny thing for me is that I didn't really get into the environment because I was suddenly moved by the destruction of the environment. I got into the environment because I was moved by the blighting of children's lives in inner urban environments. I started working in a comprehensive in West London, and the conditions in which those children were being brought up was so really unbelievable. And so we started to do very simple things with them, take them off on school trips to Wales, teach them a bit about farming, about nature, get them engaged in something very different from their own hostile urban environment. And that for me was the starting point. Then I joined Friends of the Earth, joined Greenpeace, joined the Green Party, joined everything you like to imagine, and 30 years later, here I am still.
I suppose the most personal and direct experience was having moved eventually to the country, to Wiltshire, in 1982. I decided to plant about 500 trees. I planted 500 trees and discovered that that was just a kind of dot on the landscape. And I ended up planting, I think, well over 20,000. But what happened was that the process of planting trees had all sorts of an impact on me. I, for example, started being genuinely interested in longevity. You know, the idea of actually living to see them grow became quite interesting to me. And just my whole sense of history, of myself within myself, I suppose, within the world, all sorts of things resonated that had just passed me by prior to that. So I owe trees a very great deal.
My father was a great gardener. He was a miner, and like most miners, when he left the pit, he wanted to spend as much time as possible in the open air. So he had an allotment, and he had a garden, and he grew everything from rhubarb to rhododendrons to beautiful plants to potatoes, the lot. But he was particularly fond of flower gardening, and he used to grow some marvellous, beautiful flowers. And also remember, the strange thing about it was that it was a juxtaposition between the job he did and the plants he grew. But more than that, when I come out of the house, and it was still springtime, there was this wonderful array of yellow flowers, of daffodils and this sort of thing. And then you'd look up like that, and you had a beautiful hedge you'd grow. And there was this Pitagea. It's a rather strange sort of comparison of things, you know, just the thought, it always struck me as a child that he earned his living on that thing, which is awful and ugly and nasty and dirty. And there was really what he did like doing best of all, which is growing these beautiful things.
When I went to school for the first time and someone gave every boy a square yard of mud and a packet of Virginia stock seeds, and 6 weeks later I have a dazzling square yard of colour. I've been a hooked gardener ever since.
I was so passionate about gardening that I decided at 15 that I'd leave school. No qualifications at all. Oh, what 1 level in art, which is very handy for ground force and for drawing the plans. Left school at 15 and went for a job in the local nursery. And the park superintendent said, he said, "Are you sure you want this job?" And I said, "Yes, please." And he said, "Well, I'll tell you what, I don't want you to make a hasty decision." So he said, "Why don't you come and work a fortnight for nothing? And if you like it, I'll take you on." And I thought, what kind man, you know? So I gave him 2 weeks free work, and he knew I'd like it, and I took the job on it. It was wonderful. Now, when I left school, that was 15, I was 4'10", and in a year, under glass, I grew to 5'9". So it's very good if you've got a tiny child, bung them in a greenhouse.
Pictures of their lives. This is their house, and the sun is shining. The sun doesn't always shine. Sometimes it's very, very cold.
And this here, starting from here, totally ends of England. The land centre here is Cornwall. say cheese. 3 minutes you have to wiggle and then it will come.
That might be.
We can't have the taste of the pineapple because they're not ready at the moment.
We found the pineapple! That's beautiful. He said us to find the pineapple. We found the pineapple! Yeah. I don't have it.
All right, John,
So I'm not quite sure the sequences, but you've got everything. Basically, the idea is all the plant-based stuff gets remediated, right, one by one. Don't come to Eden expecting to see what you'd see in any other Millennium Project or any other visitor attraction. You won't see hordes and hordes of graphic panels and multimedia screens and touch screens and AV presentations. You'll see a whole range of different artists and designers working in the most extraordinary media, including performance and theatre, all the way around the site. So you'll see a hugely different bag of tricks, basically, and I think you'll be really surprised by kind of what we're producing and hopefully really excited about it as well. You certainly won't have seen anything like it before.
The target, I think, would be for everybody who comes to Eden when they've left Eden to take something with them, a message with them. Somebody might come and say, I've just seen the biggest waterfall I've ever seen, wow. And just get that excitement. Other people might come and might go to the rubber exhibit, for example, and think, oh, that's quite interesting. And then a month later might put on a pair of rubber gloves and suddenly start thinking about the impact that has on the forests in Malaysia or what's happening to the people in another part of the world. Just so that everybody can take something with them, whatever size. It might be this big, it might sort of change them completely, it might change something this much, but so everybody can have something.
I think that children, if they're caught young, as it were, in the spirit that the Jesuits say, get a child when they're young and they're ours for life, is very important.
If you can get them young, then you commit them to an interest in the project and in the concepts and in the hobbies that flow from it for the rest of their life.
I think particularly children are very, very receptive and very interested. In a strange way, the more mechanical, the more deterministic their lives become, the more interested they are, I think, in things that grow.
People associate me a lot with Roberta and the Railway Children, and I think, at the turn of the century, when Roberta was wandering around near those railway lines, which one shouldn't go too near anyway now, she would have seen an abundance of wild plants and flowers that you just don't see today. And what is so lovely is that the project is going to bring back that possibility for children, and they can see things that they would not have seen today and might have seen 100 years ago.